Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's virtual event as we celebrate Science and Technology Week at the Los Altos Library. Tonight, we're going to learn about artificial intelligence with Marily Nika. I'm Cindy Hill, and I'm the president of the Los Altos Library Endowment, also known as LOLLY. LOLLY supports the Los Altos Library services and collections by enhancing the scientific, medical, and technological materials for all ages. And through the generous donations from our community, we fund special items and projects. The LOLLY board members are honored to host our annual Science and Technology event, taking advantage of our virtual meeting room so all of you can enjoy listening to our speaker wherever you are. In fact, I know that some people are actually in different time zones tonight. Marily is looking forward to your questions and will respond to them at the end of her talk, so please type them in the Q&A section, which is found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Marily will talk for about 30 minutes so that we will have plenty of time for your questions. A link to the recording via YouTube will be posted to the libraries and LOLLY's websites, most likely early next week, for yours and your friends' viewing pleasure. Please share the link. As I am a huge sci-fi fan, I read a lot of books and watch a lot of movies about the future and about the intersection of people and AI. There's a scene in one of my favorite movies, the 2000 movie called Time Machine, where the traveler wanders into the New York Public Library. And as he walks past what seem to be several tall monolithic glass panels, an image of a man appears and asks him, "How may I help you?" Of course, the traveler is surprised, but gets over his initial shock and begins a conversation with what turns out to be an artificial intelligence information provider. Just like a librarian guru always available when you need them. Is this fantasy or is this our future? Tonight, Marily may just be able to answer that question and provide us some insight into the technology. Now, it's my delight to introduce Marily Nika. Marily is an AI product leader based in the Bay Area and has worked for Google for 8 years. She's previously been with Facebook London and also with an edtech startup founder. Marily holds a Ph.D. in machine learning from Imperial College London and is currently a part-time teaching fellow at Harvard Business School. Outside of her day role, Marily acts as an advisor to early-stage startups and also empowers the women in tech communities in various ways. You can find her at www.instagram.com/MarilyNiki. A fun fact about Marily is that she once voice acted for a very old computer game called The Monkey Island. She was supposed to be the empowering heroine Elaine, but at the last minute was switched to be a mysterious witch called the Voodoo Lady because of her unique accent. We are excited to hear from Marily tonight for many reasons. Her talk is timely as we are experiencing various AI elements and applications being introduced into our personal and work lives. And in many instances, AI is already a part of our lives, and we might not even realize it. I got a sneak preview at her presentation earlier, and it is chock full of images, information, data, and even some short videos. So sit back and enjoy Marily's talk. Marily, over to you.
Hello, thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, Los Altos Library, for inviting me to give a talk tonight. So yeah, my name is Marily. I have a strange accent because I'm originally Greek. I moved to the Bay Area, I think it was about 6 years ago. I still have the accent, obviously. So I work for Google at the moment, but outside Google, I love advocating about tech. I love inspiring people. I love talking about what it is I do, and I hope that I can inspire or influence the younger generation or anyone working in tech or not to join this fantastic field. So with that said, I have prepared a deck and a presentation where part of it is going to be educational. So I'll talk about what AI is. I'll get just a bit technical. I will talk to you about some things from science fiction that you may have seen in the movies. And most importantly, I will tell you how AI is embedded in the daily life and how you can spot it after this talk. So with that said, just a couple of things about me. I have a PhD in machine learning, and I completed that in London. So I was in London for 8 years before coming to the Bay Area. I needed some sun, so California was the obvious great choice for me. I do AI at Google. Previously, I was at Facebook, and I'm a teaching fellow at Harvard, where I teach digital innovation and strategy. A few years ago, I was named Women in Tech, and it was such a great honor. But the reason I want to call this out is that I'm not anyone spectacular. I was, just very passionate and interested about computer science. You see the photo on the top right. I grew up with a computer and I was just coding and I was doing my thing, but I was very shy growing up. And I want to inspire people that may feel shy or may feel, I don't know, like they usually sat in the corner quiet, that being shy and timid, it's fine. Being humble is fine, and you can achieve things. So anyone can thrive in tech. Tech is a fantastic field to work in, and hopefully my talk will inspire you to join it or to keep working in it and not leave. And for those interested, please reach out to me on Instagram. I always love receiving messages. I have courses about AI and product management, anything I can do to help the community. Okay, so let's talk about AI. You see, I have this little ghost there because every time we hear the word AI, we're kind of afraid and we think of robots and things taking over, or we imagine someone that has spent 10 years of their lives studying about AI. But what I want to tell you is AI is reshaping the world of business. It's redefining industries. It's changing the nature of our workplace and our day-to-day life. But it's not something to be afraid of. It's something we need to embrace, and it's something fun. And it's something that anyone, no matter your age or your education, can learn. So I'll keep repeating it. You can learn it. You should stop being afraid of it. It's not a ghost. So for decades, people have been dreaming of the future. And I found this super cool little screenshot. So that here was from 1948. It was a little magazine called The Real Fact. And they were envisioning the future like with, notification systems and live schools and satellites. And it was a complete craziness for people to read that. 1948. Now, this is the reality. I'm here talking to 120 people from all over the world, and it's the norm. We even have Zoom fatigue, right? So crazy. 1948, science fiction was completely out of the world people were living in, but now it's the reality. And then in 1962, I don't know if you know about this, it's the Jetsons. Again, it was a family. It was a smart home. They had microwaves, they had internet, they had cell phones, and they had a little robot that was teaching the kids about maths. Then 1985, as you all know probably, Back to the Future. It's the first time that we see wearable tech. So AR glasses, and Marty McFly was actually making a phone call with the glasses. So on the left, you see what people were imagining, like being so crazy. But on the right, you see things that are happening here and there. In 2002, we saw a Minority Report, and Tom Cruise was actually using the user interface with his gestures, and he was doing this sort of thing, and it seemed like crazy. But now there are startups like the one that you see on the left, where you can wear this bracelet and move your hand, and you can control a drone. You can actually draw on a screen. And this is what's happening right now. This is called the Leap, if you want to look it up, LEAP. It's super cool. 1977, Star Wars, AI, assistant droids. Again, crazy, right? You had a robot, it had intelligence. C3PO could translate from all languages to all languages. Whereas now we have that translation ability here on our device. Our phone can just do that. So we have a robot right here. 2017, we had Blade Runner, and 2013, we had Her, where we see the virtual assistants. They sometimes had the form of a human, sometimes it was just an audio. But why am I talking to you about all this? Because I want to bring you up and show you that what we imagine to be crazy is now actually happening. So all this AI, crazy robots concept is nothing to be afraid of. It's happening on our day-to-day lives. So I'm sure you've used voice assistants. I used to work for the team that enabled the speech recognition capabilities for the Google Home device. And it was super fantastic because I got to experience what it means to give life to a device in a way and speak in any language and in any accent, as you can hear my accent, and the device would actually understand you and respond back. Just to get a tad bit more technical, I want to clarify some terms because I'm sure you keep hearing about the word AI, about the word machine learning, and about the word deep learning. But if I ask you what the difference is, I'm not sure how many will know the answer. And I just love this graph. It's very, very helpful. I actually have it printed in the back of my desk. And I want you to know that AI is the overall domain. So when we say AI, we mean a program that can sense, reason, act, and adapt. So it's like the intelligence we can insert to a program. Within AI, we have machine learning. Now, machine learning is the algorithm that is giving this intelligence to the hardware or anywhere you want to embed it. And then within machine learning, you have deep learning, which is the heart of AI. So deep learning is a subset of machine learning in which you have neural networks that learn from data. So every time you hear about AI, you imagine a lot of data and a model that can learn from the data. That's the high-level concept. Now let's go to an example. If we have a lot of images of cats and a lot of images of dogs, and we tell a computer, hey, take all these thousands of images and just, observe them, digest them, and train and learn from them, then eventually the program will say, oh, okay, now I know what a dog looks like and I know what a cat looks like. So this is exactly what deep learning is. Being able to provide an input, which is an image like a cat or a dog, and having as an output a guess, which the guess has a probability of whether it's a cat or a dog, but the probability is quite high usually. So if you see, there are sometimes a bit more complicated photos, right? So on the left, you see this little basket, and it's not completely certain whether it's a cat or a dog. But the machine learns and learns and learns, and it eventually doesn't make many mistakes. And it's pretty fascinating. So you see on the right, it's a fantastic visualization where you can see how a deep neural network works. And essentially, the network is composed of layers of artificial neurons. We adjust the weights using an algorithm called backpropagation. That's all you need to know. Now you understand AI. AI, you input something, and there is a probability of something being right. Hopefully, this is a good example. I have one more example that I think is really, really good. So it used to be the case for coding that if we wanted to say that this person here is walking, then you would code and say, hey, if the speed of this person is less than 4, then this person is walking. If the speed is more than 4, then this person is likely running. If the speed is more than 12, the person is biking. And if it's more, it's something else. But this seems very outdated, right? There's no intelligence in there. It was called hard coding, whereas AI means that you just give information to the system and the system understands. You don't need to provide rules. You just need to trust the system and essentially just teach it how it can learn with rules and models. And now let's go back to how this affects us in our day-to-day life. Now we talked about images, we talked about speed, but sometimes the input can be audio. So I can speak, like now my sound, to a device, and the device in the same way can say, oh, okay, this sounds like an ah, so I will write it down as an A. Or if I say hi, the machine will say, oh yeah, I've heard that before, so it's probably H-I, hi. In the same way, translation works. So if I type in something in Greek, as you see, like on the third line, you can see different language, the machine can say, oh yeah, I recognize this word, it's probably hello. And then at the bottom, you see images, but you see images with combined items. So at the bottom, you see it's a baby holding a stuffed animal. And with AI, you can leverage this technology and create amazing applications for the users. I don't know if you've used Google Photos, but you can search at the top and say, get me my photos that have a sky, or get me my photos that have a dog. And it sorts all your photos and prints you out these photos. And there's no one looking. It's the device, it's the models that use AI that actually leverage these algorithms to serve you. Okay, so we talked about AI, we talked about the technical stuff, we got this out of the way. Hopefully you realize it's not as crazy as it sounds. But how do you experience AI on your day-to-day life? And I think a lot of people are using AI and they don't even know it. So I have some apps here that are really great. Number one, this is called the Talking Camera app. And accessibility is an incredibly important part of modern computing. To provide giving access to people with limited senses and mobility is a top priority. So for people with disabilities, this app is fantastic because it actually describes everything you see. So for example, if I pointed to a person, you can say, yep, this is Mike or something. Or at the text, you will recognize the characters and read the text out loud. Or you will scan a barcode and it will say, yep, this is the juice and this is how many carbs it has and sugar. Or it can even describe what I'm looking at. So it's giving users superpowers in a way. And this is all based off of AI in the same model that I explained. The other app I want to talk to you about is Replica. So this is a friend 24/7. So people that might be depressed or anxious or lonely can chat with Replica at any point in time. And this bot is always there for you, even when your friends or family is sleeping. And when you talk, when you chat with it, you don't really understand that it's not a human, which is very interesting. So that's another app that I like. Don't use it for depression or anything like that, but try it so that you can understand the technology and how fascinating it is. Elsa Speak. So this is a popular AI-powered app to teach you how to speak English. And what's great about this is that it gives you feedback. So the AI is making this app smart, and it tells you, hey, the way you pronounce this word is not good. You need to change this and this and that. So it gives you the illusion that you're there with an actual teacher. And now some of Google's products, this is what I was talking to you about before, where you can search on Google Photos and type in dogs, and it pulls up all the photos of dogs from your library. And it's really great, especially if you're like me and I take 500 photos a day and there's no way I can sort them. It sorts it for you automatically. Smart Compose. This is another great application. So on your email, you can start typing things and you can see this grayed out part, which you don't need to type because you can just press the tab and it auto-completes. And I started using this and it has saved so much time because it knows how I write. It knows what I'm going to say. And I don't need to always say, I hope you're doing well. Best, Marily. I just click tab, and that's it. I'm done. I think this is my very favorite part of the presentation, but it's the Google Translate app. And essentially, if you're in a different country and you don't understand what the menu says or the signs on the street, you can just point your phone out like this, and it will change the letters that you see in your language. And it's fascinating. Try it. I tried it on the menu in a different country, and I could see the ingredients. I could see everything, and it's free and it's super, super cool. And again, it leverages AI. Google Lens is another one I love, which is you point at restaurants like with your camera and it pops up reviews and photos. So you can kind of choose where to eat. You can look at the dishes. You can look at the price point as well. Live translation via voice. So this is very close to what it is I was working on. But essentially when I say, okay, Google to my device, the sound, they're called phonemes. So the phonemes are going to be passed on a speech recognizer. And then the machine is going to decode the phonemes it will understand what transcript it translates to, and then it will say, okay, this is probably Greek. Let me translate it to English. And then it will take it to a speech synthesizer that will make the transcript voice. So there is live translation via voice. And you can imagine people from different countries just having a discussion just by being next to each other just because they have a phone, which is really, really great. Now, on your day-to-day life, you can do things like set a timer. So if you're at the kitchen and you're cooking something, you can say, okay, set 15 minutes of timer, or you can ask how long is left. You can use your voice to say, hey, make it cooler, make it warmer, or you can change the light colors. I just love this because Halloween is coming up, and I think if you say something like, okay, Google, make it like Halloween here, things will turn purple, and it's super great. The Google Assistant. So with the Google Assistant, you can type in and you can chat with businesses as well, which is great. I know you could chat with Starbucks, you could chat with Uber, and so on. And the other thing I want to pull out is that 80% of organizations are either evaluating AI or using AI. So companies have realized that AI is the future. They can automate their processes. They can take their staff off of manual processes and have them grow as professionals and do other things. Or they're trying to figure out how on earth to embed AI in their day-to-day. And then only 13% of organizations succeed in harnessing AI, which is crazy, but you see the opportunity there of businesses learning about AI and leveraging these models. So hopefully this makes you a bit more inspired. This makes you feel the momentum that AI has and how having the AI skills are going to empower you to be a fantastic professional. Or even learning about it is going to open your mind to ways you hadn't thought about.
First part of the taxation process is obviously the fiscal.
I have this great video here. It's short, but essentially there was a huge photo archive at the New York Times. And by using AI, they were able to digitize this archive and search it. So I'll show you. It's just a super short clip.
First part of the taxation process is obviously the physical scanning of photos, getting them out of folders, getting them out of all these boxes, and physically scanning them.
So here's the front of the picture, but the back of the picture is just as interesting.
The stamps, handwritten notes, etc., that tells us something about the photo, who took it, etc. That is the data we need to extract.
These markers all over the back are the clues for where the picture was used. So here it was published in the newspaper at least twice. Here we can see the captions that were taped on the back indicating publication. And along this top edge, there's a number. That is the indicator of where this photograph lives inside the morgue.
We'll upload them into tools which will allow the photo editors to search the archive and bring up the images they need.
So once we're done with this, it'll enable the newsroom to immediately access our entire archive from their desktop.
Once the pictures are digitized, everything old is new again.
We get the sense that covering current events is talking about what just happened, but having this resource available to reporters and editors gives them the ability to draw in all of the context of what preceded, the wider world that led to this contemporary event.
There is nothing else, no other way of reporting what.
So this is a very interesting, to me at least, especially for the part where they say that they could scan what's behind each photo. And they can see the extra information and then handwritten notes and the dates, because this is such fantastic historical archives that you can automatically leverage. And someone said in the chat that, hey, this is called pattern recognition. And yeah, pattern recognition, this is part of introducing intelligence to a machine. And I just find these applications fascinating. Thank you for the comment. I have one more nice video here. Sorry, let me pull it up. Okay, another application that is really interesting.
Inspections. Originally, it could take up to 2 weeks to do one inspection. We partnered with leading drone service company Measure, Right now with drones, we can do it in 2 days, and this is safe and quick.
For a wind turbine inspection, we go out with our pilots, and what we're looking for is cracks or defects, things that may need to be repaired.
On a typical inspection, we're coming back with 30,000 images. Spending 4 weeks reviewing images, I don't think anyone's going to argue that that's the best use of a highly trained engineer's time.
How do we speed that up, and how do we make it 10x more efficient? That's where machine learning and AI comes in.
We've built a great end-to-end solution using Google Cloud's tools and platform. With the AutoML Vision tool, we've trained it to detect damage. We're able to eliminate approximately half of the images from needing human review. The remaining 50% of their time can now be very focused on identifying that damage.
So this is
Strike the bees as they come
okay.
and
One
go.
more.
Bees always return to their queen. If we observe 500 leaving the hive and only 200 returning, we can assume that there's a problem in the local ecosystem. We trained a model using TensorFlow, Google's open source machine learning framework that examines the video from each hive. But what do we do with all this data we collect? We share it with experts so they can make more informed decisions on things like when to mow lawns and where to plant trees and flowers. So bees can continue to power our ecosystem.
So you see, there are so many different applications across a lot of different industries, and it's up to humans to think about how they can implement and how they can actually leverage them. And now for a note in the future, so how is AI going to change the world by 2050? And I was thinking about it and what to say, but essentially, number one, medicine, right? In the future, we may have personalized medicine. So they can be tailored to our exact genomes. And then AI algorithms can even enable doctors and hospitals to better analyze data and customize healthcare, specifically for me, specifically for what it is I need for my environment and my lifestyle. Another thing is vital tasks. So AI assistants can help older people stay independent and live in their own homes longer. AI tools will keep nutritious food available, maybe restock the fridge automatically, safely reach objects on higher shelves, and monitor movement in seniors' homes and so on. And then transportation, we have started to see that already, especially the Bay Area, right? So self-driving cars. But I do believe that this is going to reduce accidents. This is going to make life easier and better in some ways. So some takeaways I wanted to discuss is that AI is not the future. It's already here. It's all these algorithms. It's all these applications that you see. Every day I hear about new applications. There are new startups building fantastic new things that are just so interesting with a lot of potential. If a company is not good at analytics, then it's not ready for AI. I read this at the Harvard Business Review a few years ago, and it was just so interesting. So maybe if you're not interested in AI, maybe you can learn about analytics and become a bit more data-oriented and analytical and try to quantify things from your day-to-day work or life. And then eventually you can find ways to leverage this. But I strongly believe that being analytical is going to set you up for success. It's really good. Takeaway number 2, fully expert data scientists are still needed for tech companies, right? But not for all use cases. There are some tools that have pre-trained APIs, so they have pre-trained ways to get you started right away with what it is you want to do. And then there is more advanced solutions like custom AI with AutoML, where you can easily create custom models without using code. So I urge you to look up AutoML. And then last but not least, if you want to really get into things, there are end-to-end AI with core tools. And if you want to roll up your sleeves and start coding yourself, I totally urge you to do it. But for every level of expertise, there are AI solutions and applications available. So I want to close this presentation with my very favorite video, which is the Home Alone movie and what this would be like if the Google Assistant existed right now. So.
Mom? Dad? Hey,
Google, what's on my calendar today?
You have one event called House to Yourself.
Oh, yeah. Google, add aftershave to my shopping list.
Hey, Google, remind me to clean these sheets later.
Okay, I'll remind you. Someone's at the front door.
What do I owe you?
Looks like you paid online.
Keep that shave, you filthy animal.
Okay, cool.
Hey, Google, turn down the temperature 2 degrees. Hey, Google, begin Operation Kevin.
Operation Kevin underway.
Better get out of here before somebody sees us.
I'd like to thank you for staying with me for 30 minutes while I talked about my passions. I'd love to get any questions. I'd love if you reached out to me and asked me anything you want at all. But thank you again, Los Altos Library, for giving me the opportunity to be here virtually. And hopefully I inspired some of you to look up and just learn a bit more about AI and how things work.
So thank you, Marily. Since you can go into the Q&A and see there's a lot of comments and questions, maybe you can go through them and respond to people. And people, I just want to remind you, thank you for participating, and please send her your questions or comments.
I actually don't see the Q&A because I think I'm on my browser.
Okay, that's okay. Let me see.
But you can paste some in the chat, in the all panelists chat. I'm happy to look them up. Thank you.
We'll start with the first one.
Okay.
Good idea. So, so just for the audience, we asked Marily not to talk about the privacy issues in this talk, and we are looking to plan another event that will talk about privacy, not just in AI, but just in general. So that's why she did not speak to that topic. And let me send you another one. A couple of people had a few more questions about the digitization of the New York photos. And explain how AI is part of that whole digitization process.
Yes, that's a great question. So it's one thing to just manually scan each one of the photos. And then it's another thing to be able to retrieve automatically information from these photos. So similarly to Google search, you can just look up photos of bridges and then it pulls them up, or you can look for specific text, or you can retrieve things like if you type in something, you're looking for a relative or something like this, you can input a photo of them and it can scan through all the photos automatically and bring you matches from these photos. So I think it's the retrieval and the search that is mostly where AI lies, and on the automation and scale, because having people manually going through all these and classifying them would just take months or even years.
And then there's another question. In one of your slides, you mentioned 2050. So are these only to be achieved in 29 years, or do you see a faster acceleration?
2050 was just like a little example as to what will happen in 30 years. Obviously, this can happen in a year or 5 or 10. But I'm just saying that in 30 years, I expect full automation of certain things like medicine or care for elderly. Yeah, it was just abstract. I think I actually find it in some studies. So yeah.
Okay. And are there any first major applications of AI technology expert systems? Let's see. They had a large impact on businesses in the 1980s, and TurboTax is a widely used example.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I wanted to make the presentation a bit less focused on businesses and enterprise. I wanted to make it a bit more personal. This is why I talked about personal assistants and the photos and how it can affect you on your day-to-day versus the business side of things. But obviously, there's just so much to talk about when it comes to AI. And hopefully this is making you a bit more curious to start looking up some of the applications that there are.
And the other question, we've got lots of questions. Thank you, everyone. How do you see AR and VR development going forward?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm so passionate about these areas, AR and VR. I honestly think companies are only now starting to scratch the surface, really. I think VR is a bit more advanced than AR right now. Yeah, I think there's a lot we're going to see and a lot of AI embedded in there. I don't know how much I can share, but yeah, I'm just excited for the next couple of years to see what comes out of them.
Right, here comes another question. Let's see if I can get it all in there.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So when AI was launched in the 1950s, it focused on what distinguished humans from other animals. Only in the past 10 years has pattern recognition, which we share with them, has been rebranded as AI. Do you think the distinction is useful?
All right, let me reread this question.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting question. Okay, so let's see. Focus on distinguished humans from other animals. Okay. I like the word rebranding in the sense that, you know, maybe a lot of these things were around in research and in, you know, in the literature and so on, but there was no classification. So that's a very interesting approach. If the distinction is useful between humans and other animals, I don't know. I need to read more about this. I don't know if it really focused on what distinguished humans from other animals. Like the very first slides I showed you had the smart home and the satellites and the live notification systems. So I think the specific examples I showed were a bit more advanced than just, you know, separating humans from other animals. So yeah, I need to revisit this question, but I like what you say about the rebranding. It's totally valid. So.
And another question is, what are some of the resources to learn what to quantify and learn to be analytical? So basically the educational aspects behind all of this.
This is a great question. And there is a great book called Analytical Thinking that I can just paste on chat now. It essentially teaches you how to just shift this mindset a bit and be a bit more quantitative. Yes, there it is. Let me just paste it.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully you can see that. What level of mathematics are used for this field? It can vary. It can be things for someone that has completed, you know, school without having studied any advanced mathematics, all the way to super complicated equations. But with programming, there are built-in functions that you can use that kind of do the complicated parts for you. So sometimes you don't really need to understand the crazy math that go behind it. So I think it depends on your comfort level and how much you want to roll up your sleeves. There are some user-based interfaces that you kind of drag and drop, and you can train a model and understand things. So yeah, the short answer is it depends on what it is you want to do, and that's the beauty of computing.
Okay, and one person is interested in the bee tracking application. Is there a link you could send me that would tell me more about this application? And yes. I know that if you're not reading the Q&A, you're not going to see these links. But so in addition to Marily putting them in here, I think there's a way that when we post this to Facebook, we can also provide additional information. So we will take Marily's information and pair it up with the video. And
thank you.
We did get, so here's another question. Are there good books that you recommend that are current and nonfiction and discuss AI? So Marily, yes. If you have any others, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A chat, and we'll be sure to put that up there. So thank you for that question.
Thank you. I will actually, given these questions, I may provide like a little bucket list of books that I suggest on Amazon, and I will give them to Cindy so that she can post it if
Great.
that's okay.
That sounds
Perfect.
great. Then we got
And I
another.
pasted a link for the bees over there, which you
Okay,
can learn,
thank you.
learn more there. Yeah.
And then we have, in medicine, if after symptoms are fed into the computer and the machine makes a diagnosis, who is responsible for the treatment, the doctor or the machine? Or is this a question for lawyers?
And the machine makes a diagnosis, who's responsible for the treatment? Well, I think machines are great at making a diagnosis. Like I was reading a study where a program was, they fed it with a lot of X-ray photos, and the machine was more accurate at classifying something as being cancerous versus the human eye. So, I mean, I don't anticipate machines to fully take over medicine, of course, in any way, but I do think they're going to be powerful diagnostic tools.
Okay, and we actually have a few questions related to education and students. So this is a good one that sums them up. As a high school parent, what options do we have to get more exposure to AI? Are there activities, internships, projects that students can work on to get more exposure? And a follow-on question is, any advice for students that are interested in pursuing this field? What should they study?
Okay. So for kids, what I've seen that has worked, and I'm trying to, I mean, I have a little girl and I'm kind of trying to point her towards this world. But essentially, I think the kids need to, on a young age, they need to start having a stimulation, with technology and in fun ways. So instead of giving a book to the kids, just have them play games. Scratch is a very good way to have them start learning about coding. Roblox is another good way to get them introduced to some game-based puzzle solving. But they have a link here that I'm going to paste to you that has great resources for teaching AI specifically to kids. I haven't tried any. Google has one that's great. You can see it's on the second one. But I totally recommend Scratch because I've tried it. I was teaching it at the school, and try not to force it to kids, but kind of put it out there and wait for the kid to go close to it. I hope this helps.
And if the student is in middle school or high school, are there other ways to expose them to this?
Middle school or high school, there are camps, actually. There are computer camps, and there's summer camps, so they're with their friends, and it's fun. So I would encourage people to look up summer camps. And
I know that our high schools also have computer clubs or technology clubs. So I'm sure that the students are teaching students and the faculty is involved with them too. We did get, so one person did recommend a book called Clara and the Sun by Kazuo, I know I'm going to mispronounce his name, Ishiguro, which deals with artificial friends and related ethical issues. So thank you very much for that recommendation.
I need to buy this. That sounds fun.
Let's see, here's another question. I will pop it in here for you.
Thank you. And of course, I don't have all the answers. I'm just, I work with AI. I'm an enthusiast, and what I'm trying to share is how I would go about answering your question. But of course, take my answers. Don't take them as official or anything like this. So, early machine learning focused on acquiring new cognitive structures for small numbers of experiences, much as people do. Modern machine learning instead focuses on parametric learning from massive training sets. Do you think it made sense to abandon the earlier paradigm? I would see them as separate processes, to be honest, because it all varies on the experience and what we're trying to do. But my experience is with modern machine learning, right? That requires a lot of big training sets, and the more data you have, the better the quality is going to be. But I would not abandon earlier paradigms. Like, it's so early on that I don't think we're at a place to say we could abandon something like this. So, yeah.
Okay, and today it seems AI is being positioned as a helpful tool, but it can become abusive and can manipulate people. How do you balance between helpful and manipulation?
I think that's a question that falls under like the privacy discussion. So I think this could be a great topic for a separate, dedicated discussion.
I think this is the kind of question that I'm going to hang on to, and so as we prepare that talk, we'll definitely be able to use this.
That's a good question.
One more coming up. We all do pattern recognition, PR. Do you think we as humans are not as much made aware of PR as much as we should be? I notice I remember things better if I find a pattern recognition.
This is very interesting. If we're not made aware of PR, yeah, that is a very good point. I remember I was at school and we had competitions with other kids, like how many things can you memorize? How many things can you memorize? And someone would come up with the pattern recognition side of things and say, okay, this looks like this looks like this, and they were able to put things together. I would totally think this is something people should be more aware of. But then again, not every brain works the same. So maybe you and I both remember in the same way with pattern recognition, but maybe not everyone works like this. So good question for discussion. I wish we were in person and we could just chat over it over, coffee. But yeah, this is very, very, very interesting.
Great. How is AI different from data mining?
Let's see. So data mining is the process of extracting data, pulling out the data, making sure the data has a good structure so that you can analyze it. I don't know to what extent finding the patterns is falling within this domain, but I don't think it would be as far as having the full spectrum of AI. So I would think data mining comes in the very, very early stages of AI and maybe partially of the smart side of things, but AI I think is still the broader kind of domain. And data mining may also not be used for AI purposes as well. So.
And we had, in addition to the B question, we've had a couple of other questions that relate to applications. So is AI being used in wildfire behavior predictions?
I don't know if it is, but it sounds like a perfect type of application in the sense that you'd have the temperature information, you'd have the speed, you'd have the direction that the wind flows, you'd have the turns. So you can probably predict how things progress. Absolutely. That's a great question to look up and a great example I can add in my deck. So thank you.
Yeah. And another example is from a different individual is how has AI been used during the COVID pandemic? Do you have any insight into that?
The first thing that comes to mind is I think someone in Oxford University developed an app that could listen in cough the way people coughed and detect whether it's COVID cough or not. And if you look it up, like Oxford COVID cough or something like this, you'll be able to see it. And I don't know how accurate it was, but it's such a fantastic application of AI that is used in such an impactful way. But yeah, I don't know if it could be enough to diagnose something, but it could certainly be used as an extra signal if it's accurate enough. So yeah.
Okay, and then any insight on the
exponential cost.
Thank you. I just stumbling over that word. Cost of making more accurate results, as described in a recent IEEE article. And if you haven't read the article, you might not be able to answer this question.
Yeah, I haven't, so I don't have an answer there. But I do know that the more data you have, the more accuracy you get. So there definitely is going to be a cost. So I think it's up to AI leaders to say, okay, this is the quality I'm aiming for, and this is kind of the trade-off I'm making for the cost. So depends.
And if the person who wrote the question actually has a link or the title of the article, that would be very helpful, because I think not only would Marily like to know about it, I'd also like to put it in the link for the video. So this is a question that many of us have faced. How do they make virtual assistants more effective? For example, we often see them on websites when we are looking for technical help, or actually any help, but they don't always understand what we are asking, which is partly due to our own inability to explain what we want. And also, I think it's very similar to what you just said. It'd be so nice to be in the same room together so we could see each other and see whether or not people are understanding what we're saying. So any comments on that?
A lot of websites use old, outdated systems that are hard-coded. So this system they work like, hey, if the user says anything that contains the word returns, then paste the article about how to make a return. So it completely makes no sense. Whereas the AI-based assistant would actually understand from the context what you mean, and it would train and learn as it goes. So I've seen some really bad ones. I think they're just not using AI. They're hard-coded dialogue systems.
And we did get a reference. One of our viewers has asked me to pass on a reference to the speaker. It's an article called "The Changing Science of Machine Learning," from Machine Learning in 2011. So I'll post this in your chat so you can see it.
Thank you. Okay.
And
that's very interesting. I'm gonna read it.
Thank you. Could you discuss? Oh, here's another one. Boy, they just keep coming. Could you discuss the 1,000 brains theory of Jeff Hawkins and how that applies to future AI?
I could not discuss this off the top of my head, but this is a very good question. I will copy this so that next time someone asks me, I can appear as super smart and say, yep, I can discuss the 1,000 brains story. I know I've heard about it though. Thank you. I'm learning from these questions as well. This is a fantastic audience. Thank you so much for being so open and
yeah. I think our audience has been an excellent blend of people who have a lot of knowledge in this area, and then people like me who are the lay person, and I'm picking up all sorts of information and lots to read. So as a wrap up, just to summarize one more time, is there any advice you would give to people interested in AI and technology who haven't studied it? So in addition to all of these reading recommendations that we've gotten from our audience, is there a closing statement you'd like to make about this?
Yeah, don't be afraid of it. Go on Coursera. There are free courses. There is one free course from Stanford. And just spend a few weeks to complete it. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to end up with a certificate that you just got for free. And the best thing is you're going to learn so much more. You're going to find out resources, tools, you'll meet people, and you'll want to dive into this more. So just stick with it and just dedicate just a few weeks of your life to it, just part-time, of course, right? I think these courses are on your own pace. It can go a long way if you invest the time. So that's a great way, I think, to get people to get started with baby steps, really.
Yep. So Marily, thank you for your time. And
thank you.
And before we go, I really want to acknowledge and thank our 2 county librarians, Brian Bio and Devin Simpson. They are our technical gurus behind the screen. They've been managing the virtual logistics. So thank you too. And to our Zoom participants, thank you for being a part of Lolly's S&T program tonight. Your questions were invigorating. Thank you so much. And if I inadvertently missed your question, my apologies. We've captured them and hopefully I'll be able to add more information for you. So be sure to check Lolly's and the library's websites next week for the YouTube link. And Marily, thank you for your thoughtful talk with us. The questions really indicate a lot of passion on this, and you've given us a lot of examples. So thank you, everyone. And good night.